In this video, we're going to be taking a look at 6 techniques on how to create a Cyberpunk Glitch Logo Reveal. Hi, hope you're doing well today. My name's Knoll from Animation Deconstructed, and if you're new to the channel, make sure to hit the subscribe button so you know when I release new videos. So a quick overview of what we're going to be taking a look at today is number 1 is the animated logo outline. Then we're going to be taking a look at the colorful sliding glitch logo reveal. Then we're going to add the digital light tunnel, the cyberpunk circular energy pulse, the glitch explosion, and then in number 6 we'll take a look at some final touches with 2 time-saving glitch effects. Let's jump straight into the outline stroke logo reveal, and if you want to grab the working files, I have supplied them in the description, so grab that from my website. So what we've got here is just a logo and a background, and I'm just going to duplicate this logo so we have a copy and just hide it. And I'm going to select this logo and I'm going to go to Effect, Generate, and we're going to go down to Vegas. Now because we just want to create these outlines, I'm going to change the blend mode to transparent, and these segments are way too many, so let's take this to 2. I will take the end opacity all the way up to 1. Also going to change the color of this to white, and then just starting from the beginning here, we're going to keyframe the length and the rotation. I'm going to press U to bring up the keyframes, and let's move over to, let's say about just over 1 second is good, and change this to 100, and also change this length. Let's pull this down to about 250 and move this over to somewhere around here. Then I want to take this down to 0. We'll see this animate on and back down to 0 at the end. Select all the keyframes, press F9. I'm going to duplicate this so we have another copy. I'm going to move this over, let's say around here, and I'm going to change the color to cyan. Press OK. We're just going to change the width of this. Let's take this up to, that's 2 now, 5 should be good. Just move forward. I'm going to change the hardness of this to 1 so that we get a more solid kind of color. Let's see how this plays out. Next, we're going to create the colorful sliding logo glitch reveal. First thing I need to do is actually create some fractal noise, which we'll use to create this glitch effect. So I'm going to say fractal 1 and press OK. We can come to the effects and presets and just type in fractal noise and double click to add it. The zoom out here, you can see what's happening. I'm going to change this down to smeary, and let's choose spline. Next thing I want to do is just change the complexity down to 3. Leave that for now, and we will actually animate this coming on. So this will drive these kind of block effects, and you'll see how this works in just a moment. I'm going to press the P key for position. Let's move this over to 2 seconds, and then just move this past the logo. We should have something like this. Next thing I want to do is just animate the evolution. So pressing U, just keyframe the evolution on. Move over to 2 seconds, and let's do something like 4 revolutions. So we'll get quite a bit of turbulence on this. Moving along, let's keyframe the brightness. So I want this to start at white and animate out to black so that we will use that to reveal and hide the logo. I'm going to take this up. 100 should be good. Keyframe that, move over to 2 seconds, and -100 should be pure black. We can hide this, and with the logo selected, let's actually just add, if you want to go to effect, come down to transition, and we're going to use a card wipe to actually create this effect, and we'll be using this right throughout the tutorial to create different kinds of glitches. Now we don't want any black layer, so I'm going to turn that off, and we are going to change this flip order to gradient, so it's going to use the layer above. We can choose that fractal one, and we want to use effects and masks. Let's just move back here so we can see what's happening. We want to adjust the rows and columns. Let's take this up. Few round numbers here, 25 and let's say 22, something similar. Then I want to take the transition width down to 0, so there's no flipping. It's just sort of this digital look on our logo. And I'm going to change the transition completion about 45 as a round number. So we've actually got this animating on the wrong way, so let's just go over to our fractal noise. Let's press the U button, and we want to start with the brightness at -100 Move over to the end and change this to positive 100. And now we will have that. Next thing we want to do is create another fractal noise. So new layer, solid, fractal underscore 2. I'm going to add this from the effects and presets panel just by double clicking. Let's again choose smeary, choose block, and we're going to play with some of the complexity. Let's take this down to 2, and then let's play with the contrast. I'm going to say 200 so we get quite a bit of black here. And then the brightness just up slightly, maybe 10. Should be good to get those whites. The other thing I want to do is I just want to scale this under transform. Take off the uniform scaling. I'm going to drag this right up. I want this really fast, so 2100, and then I want to just scale this down. So about 65. Then we can hide this. And we can go back to our logo, and I want to add a displacement map. I'm going to select that fractal 2, just move over so we can see what's happening here. I don't want it to actually affect the up and down. We do need to say use the effects and masks of the layer. I'm going to take the vertical displacement down to 0. And then if you see, if we drag this, we get this displacement on the left and right. So let's just keyframe something here. Let's drag this forward about 220. I like that. Come back to about here, keyframe it, and press U. We'll move forward about 1.5 seconds. Press 0, and I'm just going to ease that last keyframe. Let's just select all 3 of these layers, press Ctrl+Shift+C to pre-compose, otherwise you can go to Layer, Pre-compose. I'm going to call this Sliding Reveal, and I'm just going to change the color of this so we can see it. Let's just time this now. Just duplicate one, and we're going to create the colorful glitch at the back. So I've just pulled it back so it starts before, and I'm going to do this by actually adding a gradient ramp. So just type in gradient in there. Let's find it, double click this to add, and I want to choose 2 colors. So we're going to choose that pink, and we're going to choose that cyan or light blue, and then we're just going to move it into place around that glitch logo. I'm going to add a glow. Let's drag this down slightly, pull this up, and then just duplicate this, pull this up, and something like this should be good. Last thing we need to do is just fade this out at the end. So I'm going to press the T key for transparency. Let's go to about here. Let's go to about here. Select that on. Move it over to about 2.5 seconds and drag this down. And then I'm going to ease both these keyframes. Moving along, we're going to create the digital light tunnel. And if you're finding this tutorial helpful, click the like button. It does help the channel and also helps this video get to more people. In order to create this effect, we need to create some blocks and some strips of these blocks. And I'm going to do this by creating a new solid. Let's just call this blocks. The way I'm going to do this is I will go to Effect, Transition, and I'm going to use the Venetian blinds. Now we can drag forward on this and you can see what happens. We can actually create these lines. So let's say about 48 should be good there. And then we can duplicate these up to split this. Let's say 90 degrees here, and you can see how this is just creating this effect really easily. Just want to adjust this, say 33, and then just duplicate one more so that we can create these large strips. And the way I'm going to do this is just by changing the width. And if we drag up, you can see what happens here. I only want 3 strips and I don't want this getting cut off at the top. So I'm going to use an effect called offset. Double click that, and now you'll see that if we click, you can move this up or down. Just going to drag it down so it's in the center. This should be pretty good, so I'm going to press Ctrl+Shift+C to pre-compose, and we're going to call this light tunnel. Move all the attributes into the new composition, and we're going to work inside of there. In order to create the rest of the effects, we need to create some dark and light areas of this. So call this dark and light. Press OK. Easy way to do this is just to add a fractal noise, and we're going to just change this. Let's choose dynamic, use block. I'm going to change the contrast to about, let's really make it dark and light. Change the brightness. Let's take that up, say about 25. We get quite a bit of white, and we're going to actually drop the sub settings down. And there's a few more options here to actually play with these shapes. We are only going to take a look at the subscaling, and I want to drag that up slightly. So let's just say 65, and then we want some evolution on this. So I'm going to go to frame 0, turn the evolution on, press U. Let's go to the end. My composition is 5 seconds long. I'm going to say 1 revolution, and we should start getting something like this. The next thing I want to do is just change the actual scale of everything. So let's drop down the transform, and let's take off the uniform scaling. Take this to the right, round number 600, and the height, let's take this really high, so about double that, 1200. Now if I play this, we should get these big white areas and these big dark areas. I can drop this below the blocks and say use alpha matte, and what's going to happen is we'll use these dark areas to switch some of these blocks off and keep the lighter areas on. Where we'll do this is just by creating an adjustment layer, and we're going to use a levels just over there, and let's actually crunch this right down. If we move to the beginning, you can see how this creates that digital kind of look. The problem we have here is that we still have the black blocks showing, and we want to make this transparent. So the easiest way to do this is actually to use a plugin called Unmult. It is free. I have a link in the description if you want to go there, and what that does is just unmultiply the layer, which means it's just taking out the black from that layer. And you will find it once you just drop it into your plugins folder under Knoll Unmult. And I can show you here that it just turns off that black area. So with that done, we just need to make this into a circle, create a new adjustment layer, and we are going to add apolar coordinates. Just going to double click here. What this enables us to do is just to take either a circle and make it a rectangle, or the opposite, make a rectangle into a circular look. So we just drag this up to 100%, and now we press play. We've almost got this tunnel effect done. Now before we move on, I just want to create one more adjustment layer, and this will be used to actually scale this. So I'm going to add a transform, and I'm going to move forward to about 1 second. I'm going to keyframe the scale and keyframe the rotation. Press U, and I'm going to move backwards to 0, and let's say 180, and take the scale down to 0. I'm going to also easy ease these keyframes. Let's press play. Now we just need to color this. Going back to our main composition, we need to just adjust a few things. Now in the example video, we have this kind of tunnel that looks like it's reflecting left to right and top to bottom. And this is pretty easy to do. We need to do is just add a mirror to this. Let's just drag this onto the layer, and initially it will be set to the right. So this is where the issue comes in here. We just want to pull this into the center, and then duplicate this and set this to 90 degrees. We'll get this whole look. Now something else I want to do is just mask out the logo area. So I'm going to go to the top, select the ellipse tool. My layer selected, just go to the center, press Ctrl Shift, and let's just mask out where the logo is, and then just select inverted. That looks pretty good. Let's just change the color of this, add a fill effect to this, change this to the pink, add some glow, drag this down and drag this up slightly, and I'm going to duplicate this just to create shadow around the edges of this. Press scale, let's scale this up, change the color of this down to something darker, get rid of this glow, we don't need it. Let's add a Gaussian blur, repeated pixels, drag this up, and then just add a radial blur to this to add some zoom. And we could use the CC radial fast blur. Now we've got something like this. Let's change both of these to add. See how this is looking. So we've used quite a few techniques already, and in these next two chapters we're going to be using some lesser known techniques and effects to create this kind of pulse effect and the explosion. So in order to create this, we need to actually create some more fractal noise. And let's just add some fractal noise to this. Sticking with the whole theme, let's choose some smeary again, and we're going to choose the block. Change the complexity down to about 2. Let's get some more contrast in this. I really want those blacks to come out, so let's say about 450. And the brightness, let's say about 70. Last thing to do is just animate the evolution. Go to 0, keyframe, press U, move forward to the end of 5 seconds, and let's just do 2 evolutions, and we'll have something like that. I'm going to press Ctrl-Shift-C so we can actually call this pulse, and I'm going to move everything in. This will now drive our circular animation, so I'm going to hide this, and we can create a circle just by double clicking on the ellipse tool. Press U twice to see all the attributes we need to change, like size. Unlink the two so we can make this a perfect round circle. Type something like 400 by 400 so we can see what we're doing here. And my settings are that I don't have any fill, so you want to turn this off, and then let's add a stroke, so just a basic stroke, and I've set it to white. Let's take this up to be quite thick. 88 looks good. I'm going to move over to 1 second, just keyframe the size so that we can see it. I'm going to take this down to 0. Can link these back up and just take this down to 0. Move forward to 1 second and just scale this out. And the last thing I want to do is actually just keyframe the stroke width, so I'm happy with it at around here, so let's say half a second. Keyframe that, and then right in the beginning let's take this down to 0. We should get quite a nice popping animation. Just select the keyframes, press F9, go into the graph editor. Let's select all of these. We just want to create quite a pointed look to this. So something like that should work. And just leave the graph editor afterwards. Now I want to add those fractals to this circle. So with the shape layer selected, press U to close it down. We're going to create this effect by actually adding a card dance simulation to this, which will use the fractal explosion settings. I'm going to double click this and add it to it, and then we're going to just adjust a few things. So first things first, take the back layer off. Next thing we want to do is change the gradient 1 to the fractal explosion, use effects and masks. Come down to the Z position, and I'm going to change this to intensity, so it's going to use the white and black. You can see it already pushes everything out. I want to just go backwards slightly, might be too much, so minus 0.7, and then we just want to take these rows and columns up, let's say about 250 and 250. Next thing I want to do is just create another one, so Control D to duplicate. Let's move this over. I think this should be pretty good around here. Like that. So let's say, and then just scale this out. So this is going to drive the kind of particles that we'll create, those digital kind of particles. And what we want to add onto this just to drive it is some, yes, you guessed it, fractal noise. So let's bring that up, add it to it, change this to dynamic. Let's change the complexity to 3, looks a bit better, change the contrast 215. Let's change the scale. I'm going to keep this uniform. Let's say 180. That looks good. And I just want this to have some evolution to it. Turn on the evolution. Move over to 1 second because it's off the screen. And let's just do 1 revolution over there. Let's rename this layer to the fractal particle driver. Press OK, and we can hide this and just drop it to the back. Let's create a new layer, solid, and we want to select like the blue color. Press OK, and we're going to use a transition and card wipe to get this done again. So we don't need any back layer. We're going to change the flip axis to random. You'll see that this starts changing things. Let's change this positive to negative just to get a different look. Flip order, let's change that to gradient. Select fractal particle driver. We want to use effects and masks. And now with our rows and columns, so we can make these a lot smaller. Let's drag this right up, let's say about 115, and columns, let's say a bit more than that, 120. We should start getting this look here. Now we need to just adjust the completion and the width of these. So I'm going to drag this up. You can see what's happening here as we move forward. It's just going to cut some of these out and some of them not, but we do need to change the transition width as well. So play with these settings to get the look that you want. And I think we just need some jitter to this, which is an option here, so we can push these out on the left and right, and we'll find these under the position jitter. Let's actually use the X amount and drag this up. You can see what's happening here. Take it up to about 5, and then change the timing randomness so that these aren't so perfectly aligned. Just start dragging up on this and we should get to a good place. Let's say 0.45. Okay, let's show our circles again, and let's just drag these forward. So say about there, and about half a second I want. Let's just see how this effect comes together. So I want to add some more texture to this logo reveal, and I'm going to create just one more glitch explosion, and we'll be done with most of the effects that we're working on. In order to create this, I just want to duplicate the logo and show this, and we can pre-compose this. And let's say logo explosion and move all attributes inside. Let's double click to go inside here and duplicate this, hide one as a backup, and scale this up really large. Then I'm just going to hide it for now. Now we need to work on the actual explosion. So let's create a circle like we did before. Press U twice, unlink, and let's say 1600 by 1600. I don't want any stroke on this. And take that off. I want a solid fill, and I want that to be white. Then I want to create this kind of motion graphics pop, and that will drive this effect as well. Let's keyframe the size at frame 0. Let's move this over just over 20 frames and take this down to 0. And 0, we can actually link this back. I'm going to press F9 just to ease these, and press U to close that. I'm going to duplicate this. Just move this about 3 frames forward and change the fill to black. Select both of these, press U. Just want to change the way this is easing, and just drag this so we get a slower end. Something that's going to happen is you might get this kind of outline at different resolutions, so I'm going to drag this up slightly on the black layer just so it covers. So now that we've got that, I'm going to pre-compose these. Control Shift C, and let's say this is circle pop. Press OK, and we can hide this. Let's create a new layer, and we're going to drive this again with some fractal noise. So let's say fractal pop. Doesn't matter what color this is, just add the fractal noise already. And let's go to dynamic progressive to have this a bit different. Let's change this to block. Let's also change the contrast. Let's bring this right up, say 220. And the brightness, let's just get those whites up a bit. So 35 should be good. Let's take down the complexity down to 2. We should get a nice blocky kind of look on here. Let's also animate the evolution, and let's move over to about 3 seconds, and about 3 evolutions should be good. Now something I want to go back and do is just add some turbulent displace to this and some blur. Going to create new adjustment layer. Let's say turbulent displace, and we should get this kind of warping effect to this. Let's take this right up, so that should be fine. The size maybe up a bit as well, and then I want to add a Gaussian blur to this. Double click that, repeat edge pixels, and let's drag this to say about 130, and we should start getting these little bits happening. Now that we're happy with that, we can carry on. I'm going to go to Effect, Transition, Card Wipe, can turn the back layer off, and we're going to change the flip axis to random. Let's also drag these up, let's say about 40 and 80. Let's change the actual flip order to gradient so that we can use that layer. Let's go down to Circle Pop, use effects and masks, change the transition width down to 0, change the transition completion. Let's drag this up, that eats in, let's say about 50%. And then we want to actually change the card scale. So just drag this down and we should get these little squares all over. And then we've got our large logo over here. Can bring this forward and just change the mode of this to silhouette alpha. Now when we play this, we'll actually get the outline of our logo in the animation. I'm going to go back to the original, and we can add some color to this. I want to push these left and right a bit. So we've already created under the sliding reveal that fractal noise, which we just show this here, looks like this. So we can copy this and go back into our main composition, paste this, drop it to the back and just hide it. Then with the logo explosion selected, let's just select displacement map. We want to displace this. Let's select that layer, so fractal 2, use the effects and masks, and I just want to push these, so something like this, and just backwards slightly so we get this real kind of glitch looking explosion. Then let's change the color of this. I'm going to add a tint, double click to add, and let's change top color to this magenta and then use that same kind of blue. Last thing I want to do is just add a glow to this. Just drag this up slightly and drag up the glow radius, and then change this to additive. Let's also just time this, so let's just move it over to about here. See the draw on, we see that, we see a bit of a, I think that should be good. Let's RAM preview this. So we're in the final section, and I want to show you 2 techniques which will help you save a lot of time when working with these kinds of animations. So in your project you will have some footage of a glitch. I do have this linked in the description in my working file, so make sure to get that if you want the footage. I'm going to drop this on top of everything, and then I'm just going to move to a position that I'm happy with what's going on here. Let's say something like this. And I'm just going to trim this. Control-Shift-D should trim. I've got a Spanish keyboard, so it's hard for me to use brackets to actually cut left and right. And the next thing I want to do is just add a tint to this. I'm actually going to use 2, so just want to get the color out of this, and then duplicate this. Let's just make this white the pink kind of color. And when we play through, we should get something like this. I'm going to change this layer to additive, and then what I want to do is just move forward to about here, and let's cut this so it actually turns off. So Control-Shift-D to cut again. Now the other technique is just to actually create a layer, new adjustment layer, and then draw some masks on this. So I'm going to draw this one here. Let's just crop this down. Don't want these to be too long, so these are going to actually add some scale to the scene. I'm going to duplicate this, move it over. I'm going to select this, make it smaller. We just want about 3 of these. Actually have that one come first, And then duplicate one more, move it over. Let's go over here, double click, and move this into position. Add a transform to this layer and just scale this up. And then just copy this and paste it to the other two layers. And I'm just going to make the second one shorter, and you can play with these as you like. If you're interested in seeing any more videos of mine right now, take a look at one of the two videos popping up on screen now. Keep animating, and until next time.